Today we talk with PJ Laferla of SportsInput.com about sports data, legalization of U.S. sports betting, LinkedIn, and so much more.
This is crazy.
Everywhere you turn, it's the same old sports talk, the same headlines, the same news, and the same boring information. This podcast is here to change all of that. We bring you hot sports takes, winning sports betting strategy and picks, reliable gaming industry news, and breaking interviews with some of the biggest names in sports business. My name is Ryan Newpel, and welcome to the Noop Sports Show. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Noop Sports Show, episode number 57. My name's Ryan Newpel. I'm your host here. Thank you again for joining me. I appreciate it as always. We love having the audience that we do. Hopefully you enjoy this show and are listening either on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, whatever platform you're on. You have subscribed and you are thoroughly into this show. What we do is we interview sports betting and sports business, really, guests, influencers, top-level company owners, things of that nature in this space, and we just get to know them. We get to understand what they're working on. We talk to them about future projects. We talk to them about their predictions and their outtakes and their looks at the industry as a whole, just to get some further insight and for you to get to know some other people. And who knows, there may be some connections that can be made from a listener listening to somebody that interests them as well. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you. If you have anybody you'd like to hear on here, or if you yourself would like to be on the show, just be sure to reach out to me and we will get you on the show. So we are only a few weeks out from football season, the best time of year for sports. I cannot wait. Our company is fully invested in football. We are planning. We are getting all the content we need ready for all of the people we work with, and it's going to be a fun year. I mean, football is always an awesome time of year. Thursday night football, leading into Saturday college, Sunday NFL, then Monday night football. It's always amazing time. I'm hoping to get my brother on here, who's really a sports fanatic, and us two can just talk football, maybe leading into a NFL preview for the season, something a little less interview-ish and a little more sports related. So we'll hopefully get that set up here over the next few days. But for now, we won't spend any more time. We'll jump right into my interview with PJ Laferla. All right, welcome back to the Noob Sports Show. Today I'm here with a very special guest. I have PJ Laferla on the line with me. PJ, are you with me?
I'm here, buddy. I'm here.
Hey, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it. For all you listeners out there that want to know, PJ is the Chief Growth Officer at SportsInput.com. PJ, can you give us, before we really get in here, we're going to talk some sports betting today. We're going to talk some legal U.S. sports betting. But before we get into that, could you tell our audience a little bit about what Sports Input is and I guess what you're doing in this space?
Yeah, so Sports Input has actually a number of years. It was originally founded as an online sports newspaper. A lot of unique articles relative to everything sports, covering, baseball, football, hockey, basketball, everything that you could really bet on. But the focus at the time, Sports Input went online in 2011, and sports betting was still kind of taboo in the U.S. I mean, there were certainly, outside of Vegas, no legalization. So we kind of shifted gears a little bit, put Sports Input on hold, and after New Jersey, the Supreme Court struck down PASPA, and everybody knows what happened there, we decided that from a name alone, we felt like Sports Input had a lot of legs. Good marketing, good SEO. And we really took a long, hard look at the space and kind of identified what was missing. And we felt as though there was a unique opportunity for sports data from a betting perspective. Sure. Now, we all know that there's some giants out there with data, but there's really nothing relevant, soup to nuts, that is geared towards a sports betting perspective. So what I mean by that is, if you go on any website, you'll see traditional standings, won, loss, game back, percentage, maybe a run differential, for instance, in baseball or something. But it's very few and far between that it digs deeper to money standings. Where would this team be year to date based on $100 or a 1 unit play? What's their over under? What are their pitching records? What are their run support? These are the things that I felt was really lacking in the marketplace, and I thought would be a very key component to a betting strategy for it. I mean, let's face it, information is really what the number one goal is when it comes to betting, right?
Yeah.
So we figure with Sports Input, we could provide, we can't guarantee winners, and we're not selling picks or anything like that. But what we can do is help you with as much information as you need before putting your hard-earned money on a play.
Yeah,
so
and
that's really the concept.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask. I'm sorry to interrupt you there, but that's what I was going to ask. So Sports Input, I mean, who's a user of Sports Input? Are you looking to, is it the casual bettor? Is it the customer? Is it the end user that's going to use something like Sports Input? Or are you looking more business to business where, you'll work with websites and companies to integrate your data into what they're currently doing to help the end customer at the end of the day? But who uses Sports Input?
Yeah, that's a phenomenal question, and it is a B2B component, and everybody would be using Sports Input, but probably not know that they're viewing our products. And what I mean by that is Yahoo or Nuke Sports or, just any other sports-related website that you could see out there that sees a benefit from our product will be available to the user. But it's like one of those things where our name might be behind the scenes, but in reality, we're kind of powering a lot of different websites.
Yeah, so you're powering, business sites or sports-related business sites that really want to have an edge and add some of this data. That makes total sense. And I think you're, from looking at what you're doing a great job to start here. One thing I wanted to bring up, we'll shift gears a little bit. We'll talk a little more about Sports Input throughout this conversation, but you really, so you're out on LinkedIn quite a bit, you individually, and I wanted to tell you that I really enjoy some of the stuff you put out there. So you guys listeners, PJ Laferla, if you're looking to just follow sports betting information, data, takes, I mean, you have some hot takes out there that I really enjoy. Where did that come from? I mean, is that just something you enjoy doing, or is that, I guess part of your strategy to build your business, or what? I mean, do you just enjoy being out there on social media and LinkedIn?
Well, it's a little bit of everything. And as an avid sports betting advocate like yourself, you kind of know every day there's excitement that surrounds the world of sports betting. But at the end of the day, LinkedIn is obviously viewed as a professional business kind of Facebook for business individuals. With that being, and you would never think that would be a fit, but I mean, I don't know about you, but every day I just there's news in my feed on LinkedIn regarding a new partnership around sports betting, and even a company like Fox partnered with the Stars Group. So there's quite a few. There's a lot of activity, I should say, around the sports betting world that I'm seeing on LinkedIn. So I jumped in, and I try to give insightful posts about what's happening in the world of sports betting. And sometimes it's a majority of the times it's centered around odds on teams and different leagues, and a lot of times it's on the business side of sports betting. For instance, if I recall yesterday, one of my posts was there are now 1 in 5 adult Americans living in a state that offers sports betting. I mean, if you actually think about how powerful that is, I think that's a good message to get out to the network. And again, it's not, I'm not posting free winners or trying to sell picks or anything. I'm trying to, give relevant information. And something like that I thought was very relevant. So, and then there's other times where I'll post, like this morning I put a bunch of futures bets centered around the Green Bay Packers.
Mm.
Now, why did I pick the Green Bay Packers? No particular reason at all. Tomorrow it could be the Cleveland Browns. The next day it could be baseball. But again, I'm just trying to have fun with it and trying to stay relevant and keep sports betting, constantly going.
Well, and that's kind of where I'm going with this conversation is that, and I'm glad you're having the same experience I am on LinkedIn, because people listening to this show, I mean, who knows where they're coming from, but they're interested in sports betting in general. And I think a lot of times when you get out on social media, Instagram and Facebooks and stuff like that, you're just getting hit over the head with crap. You're getting hit over the head with, touting and buy my pick and do this and just junk. And I've really found LinkedIn to be, like you said, professional, news related, relevant to this industry that we're all trying to learn and love. So, you're contributing to that as I'm trying to do as well. And so I guess I'm just trying to urge on to listeners, LinkedIn is pretty valuable from a learning and news perspective in the industry that you're into. It's not just for finding a job. I mean, when I think of LinkedIn, I used to think, oh, that's where I go if I really want to try to find a job. Now I'm going there to learn about, this craft that we call sports betting, learn about the industry from a news perspective. So I'm glad you're having the same experience. I thought you probably were.
Yeah, and I would actually like to make one more point on LinkedIn that I think is very important, especially if there's some people that have reluctancy or still look down or frown upon sports betting. Before I made this a full-time career, I had a background working for professional sports teams. I worked for the Anaheim Angels quite a few years back. They were still Anaheim before they became LA. I worked in the NFL for the San Diego Chargers. And, while I was on the business side of those organizations, just the mere mention of betting would probably be grounds for termination, Mm-hmm. And before legal sports betting became what it is now and constantly growing, I was a little fearful because, working in sports is very small niche.
Sure.
It's just very easy. There's a lot of people out there. It's a very small industry to work in, believe it or not, even though it's a very big industry. And I was a little reluctant to make those kind of posts, but it's a legal component of what's happening in America. I mean, New Jersey took in $3 billion in bets in its first year. I mean, who could dispute that? I mean, how can you frown upon something like that? It's obviously working.
Yeah, and just imagine when these big states, I mean, not saying New Jersey's not a big state, but imagine when California, Texas, Florida, some of these states really get going. Illinois, another one that once it really gets going, there's just, massive amounts of people that are going to be interested in it. So, yeah, for sure. I think you're right. I think it's definitely changing and, for the better for us and for people that enjoy sports. So that's cool.
Yeah. When the leagues are doing partnership deals with gaming partners, you're okay.
Yeah. Times have changed when you start seeing those. And we've been seeing that kind of news every month. Seems like another big partnership with a league or just announcements of, two companies, hooking up together of major sorts. So pretty cool. On that same note, I'll put you on the spot a little bit here, but so, every day we see new information about a new bill that's being released or a new bill that's, into legislature and they're looking at it to legalize sports in some other new state. By the end of, let's say, 2022, so let's say in 3 years, how many states do you think we have legalized sports betting in? Put you on the spot there.
Before I get into a definitive number,
mm-hmm.
I just saw something that I really thought was interesting just the other day, and it broke down states that were legal,
mm-hmm.
States that are, I guess, for lack of better terms, in the process of moving forward with legalization,
yep.
and essentially states that haven't done anything at all.
Mm-hmm.
So the numbers were pretty significant in favor of legalizing, sports betting all around the country. I got to say 50 to 60% at least,
In 3
which
years.
would be what, about the, I don't know if that's conservative or not. I mean, it just,
Well, we're all guessing here. I just wanted to get your off the cuff thoughts on how quickly you thought this would move. Is this something that after my thought process is after this football season, not that states don't realize how big this is going to be yet, but maybe they don't yet until after a football season when they see, okay, New Jersey's bringing in a handle of whatever now. But wait till they go through a big football season and they see how much handle's coming in. These other states are going to really open their eyes and be like, oh, crap, we can't ignore this any longer, which I'm sure they have people, in their state saying that already. It's just getting the right people to open their eyes to it. So I don't know. I just wanted to get your thoughts on how quickly you thought it would move. And, half 50 to 60% in 3 years, I think is a fair assessment. I tend to agree with that.
Yeah. And, the other thing you got to consider, guys like you and I, who have our pulse on the industry in general, are following that more closely. The bettors that live in these states, in New Jersey and Pennsylvania, they could probably care less as long as their state's legalized.
Yeah, they're driving down the road and placing a bet. They don't care if the other stuff happens. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Great point. But what about the big states? I mean, and I say big states, when I say big states, I keep thinking of California, Texas, Florida. What are the chances of those? I guess those three in particular coming on board anytime soon. Are you hearing anything about those three states?
I thought California was in the news recently about putting a bill together. Coming from a guy who lived in California for 15 years, it doesn't surprise me that it's taken so long. I mean, their political views on everything and laws. I mean, they did a great job with the medical marijuana several years ago, but I think it's going to happen. I don't know if it's going to be within the next 12 months, maybe by the next college and pro football season. I don't know. Florida is also a little politically odd to me, but I'm also surprised that state has not yet, joined the fray of all the other ones. Basically the same with Texas, but I don't know where I'm getting this from, but I would think California would really, out of those three, become legal first.
Yeah, no, I think you're probably right along the same lines of what I'm thinking. That I'm seeing most of the news of bill proposals and things like that from California. I know Florida, obviously the big hang up is the Indian tribes and that type of thing.
Yeah.
That are kind of controlling that casino space right now. And so, there's going to have to be some sort of agreement and talk through all of that to kind of get into Florida, which I'm selfishly hoping happens here, living in Florida myself. But and then Texas, I'm not hearing a lot about. But I would think it's a huge sports state, man. There's major professional teams there. Got to be a lot of big betting interest down there. So I would think it would be huge there.
Well, you know what else those three states have in common, which is kind of ironic. You drive 2 hours in any direction in California, you're still in California.
Mm-hmm.
You drive 2-3 hours in Texas any
True.
direction, you're still in Texas. My point is, and the same with Florida. Florida is a very underrated. People don't realize how big the state of Florida is.
Yeah, especially lengthwise, right? Up and down.
But my point to that is, okay, so New Jersey and Pennsylvania are kind of joining states, but it's very easy on the East Coast of the map to drive if your state doesn't have something that like taking legal sports bets to drive to a different certain area to make those bets.
True.
And in those areas, I mean, California, you got to either jump on a plane or take a 6-hour ride to Vegas to place a bet, you know?
Right. That's a great point.
Yeah, that's something that should not be underestimated, because that really holds a lot of value one way or the other. So I just wanted to make that point.
No, that's a great point. I mean, I never really thought about that, up in those Northeast states. Yeah, you're right. Like, people living in Connecticut can drive 2 minutes across to a different state. I mean, very simple, but you got these massive states.
I mean, even Maryland.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, Maryland had, for some reason, they pushed back their sports betting bill for about a year. But I mean, if you want to take a ride to New Jersey or Delaware or Pennsylvania, you could achieve that without spending hours and hours and hours in the car.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, so do you do anything, and this is a kind of an off-topic question, but I was just curious, do you do anything in the esports space, and does that pique your interest at all, or are you completely out of esports?
The short answer to that before explaining is no. I did look into it. I know it's huge. I know it's big. I know it's forever growing. I know there's a lot of resources and capital that are being poured into it. I had made a decision where I think between the big six sports, MLB, NFL, NBA, NHL, and the two colleges, I felt like I had enough meat on the bone to move forward with my concept. To take on, I'm unfamiliar with esports as far as all the ins and outs. I don't know it as well as I know traditional sports betting, and perhaps I'm missing out on something. But I think I want to grow the business that I have now, and then look at other product offerings. But right now, I'm not involved in any way.
Yeah, and that's fair enough. I mean, that's kind of how I am as well. I have this kind of interest in it, right? I mean, it's not like my passion. It's not what I love, but I just, like you said, I see it as so big, and I see it as the up and coming thing. It's not like I don't see that. It's just, man, you can't tackle everything, right? You have to kind of pick your battles in this space, because there's really so many different angles you could go, so many different, I guess, ways, of working in sports in general. And so esports is kind of one of those things on the outside of my thing as well. But I do find a lot of interest in it, and just the major news, and just seeing, how big this is going to be. And I guess, looking, I have 3 younger kids, and they're playing these games and doing all this stuff. And I'm always, you guys are wasting your time, whatever. And they're like, well, Dad, somebody just won $3 million in esports. And I'm like, I'm like, it's crushing my point to them. So I just find it an interesting space. I was curious if you had, any stake in that area or not.
Yeah, and I appreciate you asking that. And I'm kind of glad you brought that up, because you could kind of nitpick your way through traditional sports betting as well. And what I mean by that is I had a conversation with a pretty prominent figure in the sports betting business, and we were going back and forth, and I was flattered that he was impressed with my sports betting expertise, and he kind of pointed out that I didn't really talk about live betting as much as everything else,
Yeah.
And and it's just to the point that you were making about esports. I mean, somebody wants to point out what you don't have instead of what you do have, and I'm talking to this guy, and we're talking futures, and we're talking odds, and we're talking different kinds of bets. And this is something that's really important that would be good for the show. And when I kind of further asked him about the live betting, he gave me a pretty impressive stat. He felt like within the next couple of years, over 50%, maybe 60% of the bets that are being placed are going to be live betting bets.
Wow.
So I found that pretty interesting as well. But again, that's something that I'm not really touching on. It happens so fast, right?
Does.
I mean,
yeah.
there's really no handicap. You can't research it as well as you can, on a game that's prefixed with odds. You just can't do it. You just can't do it. But it's funny that you bring that up, because even though they're two totally different animals, it was kind of like an analogy that I wanted to make.
Yeah, very, very good analogy too. And I've been in those same conversations and met many of these conferences that I've been to over the last few months. Live betting is one of the big topics, and a lot of these, I guess, data companies that are integrating with sports books and really trying to power the sports books. I mean, that's at the forefront of what they're doing, is making sure they're on top of this live odds and being able to quickly change these things on demand. I mean, my brain just goes crazy thinking about how you have to be able to do that so quickly, and how that works. And I think it's very interesting. And I do agree. I think live betting is going to be the future, because people love instant gratification. People love the fact that, man, I can make a bet and it can win or lose in 10 seconds, That's a crazy thought, and people are in this, we all live in this show me the money right now culture that I just think live betting is going to be the future. But yeah, it's impossible to handicap. You just can't keep up with it. So you have to probably, if you're going to be a good live bettor, you really need to more just understand the sport, understand, I guess, the game situations and things of that nature. I mean, we're kind of getting off topic here, but that's a whole nother conversation we could probably have, how to become a good live bettor. But it is intriguing.
And I won't harp on it too much longer, but I just think, if I could give anybody out there a tip, it would just be, take the dog. I mean, a hockey, it's probably fourth on the list of the sports when you're talking about betting, at least from an interest standpoint. But, just as an example, you have a 160 fade that comes out of the gate that's losing 2-0, that all of a sudden is like a plus 500 underdog.
Right.
And turns out to win the game, 7-3 or something, something ridiculous. I mean, that to me is like, but again, that's not really what sports betting to me is. If you're truly looking at sports betting as a business, I would have live betting as one element, but not the element.
No. Yeah. 100% for sure. Definitely. Well, cool, man. Well, I mean, I could sit here and talk this all day long. I really could. And I hope to have you back on, and maybe we can talk a little more specific topics, maybe on a regular basis, because I think you and I could have some really good in-depth conversations. Obviously, you're very, very knowledgeable in this space. And like I said, I love following some of the stuff you put out there. So I do appreciate that. But let's, for the sake of time, I try to keep these things under 30 minutes or so. Let's circle back, and I want to hear any last words, I guess, or anything about Sports Input that you wanted to make sure our listeners understood or heard.
Well, and I appreciate the plug, but we're just trying to be the leading cornerstone of the go-to for sports betting data, statistics, and again, it's all from a betting perspective, 100%, not some of it, like some of the other competition out there. So I appreciate you asking about that again. And just like you said, follow us on all our social media outlets are at Sports Input, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram even. So it's pretty easy to find us.
Yeah.
Some companies will have a different variation for one reason or another, but we're at Sports Input on all social media outlets.
Awesome. At Sports Input. And then also I'm going to urge once more, PJ Laferla, find him on LinkedIn if you haven't already. If you're interested in the sports betting space, definitely find him out there. And we can all comment together on some of this exciting news that continues to pour out around our industry.
Thank you so much for having me on your show. I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely, PJ. I appreciate you coming on, and we will do this again. So let's get something on the schedule, and we'll do it again. So with that said, I appreciate you being here, and have a great rest of the week.
Awesome. Thank you, Ryan. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Noob Sports Show. If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider subscribing to our iTunes channel today. Plus, visit us at noobsports.com for more picks, previews, strategy, and news. That's knupsports.com.